Welcome to Reader Seeks Romance Channel's Romance Roundup, the #1 romance book recs talk show. I am Liz Donatelli.
And I'm Libby K, author of the sweet romance series Buckeye Falls.
This is a mini episode. In this mini episode, we report back to you about the romance books that we mentioned on the show as being on our TBR list that we've read and loved. Watch Romance Roundup on Reader Seeks Romance Channel and subscribe on YouTube. Listen to Romance Roundup on PodBean and all podcast apps. Viewers and listeners can email us at readerseeksromance@yahoo.com. Follow us on Instagram at Libby K Author and at Reader Seeks Romance. Well, Libby, being this is a mini episode, I'm going to get right to it. Libby, let the roundup begin.
Giddy up, Liz, here we go. So the first one I'm happy to report back on is My Vampire Plus One by Jenna Levine. This is, as you might assume from the title, the vampire romance I talked about this fall, or this past fall. I loved this book. Reggie was everything I wanted him to be as our main character and more. Him and Amelia's love story was a bit unusual, but again, it's a vampire romance, so what do you expect? I loved the pacing of the book. I loved the silliness of the book. I loved the romance of the book. And it was one of those where, for as quirky as it was also, it had some very sweet moments. And I would say that this is a book that I would recommend to fans of paranormal romance or people like me who usually don't read paranormal romance. It was that enjoyable. Even the parts that felt outlandish, because I'm not a paranormal reader usually, made perfect sense with how Jenna Levine wrote them. Or maybe Reggie was just so lovable, I just didn't even care. From page one, I'm like, oh, the payoff was amazing. He was obviously a delightful supporting character in My Roommate is a Vampire, and seeing Cassie and Frederick again was amazing. Yes, I don't have enough time to tell you how much I love this book, but I'm happy to report back that My Vampire Plus One by Jenna Levine lived up to all of my expectations.
I also read My Vampire Plus One, and I really, really enjoyed it. I haven't mentioned it on the show. I'm not sure why, but I don't know. So I did not mention it in this mini episode because technically I never mentioned publicly that it was on my TBR.
That's true.
Yeah. So, but I can attest that, yes, it is very good. And I did not read My Vampire is a Roommate.
Nope.
No, My Roommate is a Vampire. That's fantastic.
I'm going to leave that in.
I think you should. That was everything I needed it to be.
So I did not read My Roommate is a Vampire, and I still very much enjoyed My Vampire Plus One. So you don't need to read both, but I've heard that the first one is really good too. So it's best to enhance the experience by reading both. So I would like to report back on a sci-fi holiday romance that I mentioned in episode 39, our holiday romance episode. I read Rudy, R-U-D-I, by Honey Phillips, and this book is part of Rescued by the Alien collection, a collaboration of authors telling holiday tales with a sci-fi romance twist. It released in November 2024. And I read it pretty much right away, as soon as it came out. Some might recall that in last year's holiday romance show, episode 9, I mentioned having read and enjoyed Honey Phillips's 2022 alien romance titled Cinta, like Santa, Cinta, and that was from the Stranded with an Alien series. So now I am excited to announce that I also very much enjoyed, I'll even say adored, Honey Phillips's Rudy. The core message of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is beautifully adapted to a spicy romance for adults who love cozy, heartwarming Christmas stories and who appreciate non-human cinnamon roll protagonists. And I know, Libby, that we had discussed what on Rudy glows. We did talk.
I don't want to spoil it, but is it his nose or is it another appendage?
It is another appendage. It's his antlers.
Oh, okay. I'm like, I don't think I remember this book cover if this was going where I thought it was going.
Well, the book cover kind of shows a little bit of the antlers. So the antlers do glow and they enable Rudy to help out his town, even though he is ostracized. And what's great about this book is it is a holiday romance, but you can read it anytime, even just in the winter, because it isn't specific to Christmas. People
Oh,
people in this world have a celebration that is, it resembles Christmas activities and such, but it is not Christmas. It is a different, like it's a Yuletide type of experience. The tropes in Rudy are forced proximity, small town, glowing antlers. Maybe that'll be a trope from now
I was
on.
just saying that could be a micro trope.
That could be a micro. The micro trope is something on the non-human body glows. Like if I were to describe more of the book, you'll say, "Oh, that's schmaltzy, Liz," and that's just like, "Oh, like a Hallmark." But so I won't tell you anything else. But just know
Although, but you know, I like schmaltz and Hallmark, so that's right
that,
up my alley.
but it's like schmaltz and Hallmark, and there's a little bit of adventure to it. But it's done in a way where you're not like, "Oh, this is just trite and just tired holiday romance material." I loved it. I bought into the whole glowing antlers thing, and I want to read more, Honey Phillips. So I report back that Rudy by Honey Phillips is a winner.
All right. Well, I'm still intrigued. I'm going to keep it on my TBR for 2025.
Yes, but somehow I don't think you're going to read it, but that's okay.
Well, it's not to be weird. It's short, right?
You can finish this quickly. Yeah.
That makes it sound like I have trouble reading. Even you, Libby, can finish this book.
This is a page count even Libby can tackle. What's your next report?
Okay, so my next report is actually one that you recommended several times throughout 2024, and I'm happy to report that I finally read it. I read and enjoyed Love, Lies, and Cherry Pie by Jackie Lau. I know you talked about this back in the spring of 24. It has Pride and Prejudice vibes. It features a romance writer and kind of a buttoned up guy who is the Mark Darcy character. His name is Mark, so that's nice. I know that Bridget Jones is based on Pride and Prejudice, but in my mind, like sometimes it's almost the same thing, which is ridiculous when I think of Mark Darcy. And anyway, so the point is, I really loved this book. As a romance writer, I found the portions where she talked about how her family doesn't, like, oh, you're not really working. I felt that to be very relatable. Not to say that my family does not support my romance writing side gig, but I felt like the way she described people's opinions of what writers do and what the process is like, I found that to be the most realistic portrayal in fiction I've ever read. Plus, I just like Jackie Lau's writing in general. The romance was a nice slow burn. Mark was a delight from page one. And I felt like Emily was just messy enough, if that makes sense. I didn't want her to be too chaotic because I just felt like that would have been too much of a cliche. But no, I loved it, and I'm glad you recommended it. And I'm glad I finally actually picked it up and read it because, as we talk about every time we have an episode, there are too many things on our TBR lists, and it's hard sometimes to prioritize. But if you're looking for a lighthearted, and I don't remember there being a lot of steam with this one. It was, I would almost say it was closed door, but it was just the secondary characters are hysterical. Both of their families are a lot of fun and really add to the story. So if you're looking for some Pride and Prejudice vibes, with a protagonist that's a romance writer, I cannot stress enough how much I enjoyed Love, Lies, and Cherry Pie by Jackie Lau.
And you're welcome.
Thank you. Seriously, this was all you. I mean, Jackie gets an honorable mention, but it was all you, Liz.
It really, yeah.
And I have one more. And I have to say, when we did our episode at the end of 2024, talking about our favorite books of the year, I had this on there. And then at the last second, I took it off and put it on this episode because I talked about wanting to read it over the summer. And that is The Art of Catching Feelings by Alicia Thompson. This is a baseball romance. It is the first baseball romance I think I've read in 2024. Usually, as we know, hockey is my sports romance of choice, even though in real life I don't really like sports at all. I've enjoyed all of Alicia Thompson's other books, but there is something about how she wrote these characters. I was engrossed from page one. There are elements of grief that she handled so beautifully that didn't weigh the story down, but at the same time, Chris, our hero, he what he was going through on and off the field was just written so beautifully. Like there was a moment where I almost had to put the book down because I was getting a little emotional, and that's usually not how I am when I read books, but how he was feeling just jumped off the page. And Daphne was beautifully flawed. Even when she's doing things and I'm reading the book and I'm like, "What are you doing, girl?" I knew it was going to work out because I trust Alicia Thompson's writing, and the book was way sexier than I expected. There's a couple scenes where I was just like, holy crap, like it came out of nowhere, but at the same time it was perfect. There is a trope that I usually don't like, which is kind of that mistaken identity. He doesn't realize who she is right away, and I usually don't like that, but again, Alicia Thompson handled this in such a way I didn't even care. Like I was so invested in both parts of Daphne's life and Chris and his storyline. It was just, I don't want to give anything else away because there were so many twists and turns to the story. It was just beautifully written. It was sweet. It was funny. It was relatable. And it has made baseball potentially the sport of 2025 that I want to read more about in romance. So I cannot say enough good things about The Art of Catching Feelings by Alicia Thompson.
Wow, that's a lot of reporting. I hope to have more report backs in 2025.
This
Yeah.
is almost like those little book reports we had to do back in middle school and elementary school, where it's like, what did
Yeah.
you read over the summer? But it'll be, what did you read over the winter?
Right. Yeah. Are you satisfied with how many books on your TBRs you got a chance to actually read?
Yes and no. There's still a few that I haven't read yet that are literally on my shelf behind me that like taunt me every day when I am just sitting there staring at my bookshelf. So there, I still have a lot more to report back on. But I am pleased when we said we were going to do this mini episode. I'm like, oh my God, I got 3.
Well, good job, Libby. I'm very impressed with the number of report packs that you had. So thank you for that. And that's our mini episode, Report Back Roundup. Watch Romance Roundup on Reader Seeks Romance channel and subscribe on YouTube. Listen to Romance Roundup on PodBean and all podcast apps. Thanks for joining us, romance readers.
Happy reading, everyone.